Hey, everybody, welcome into Strictly Speaking here on True Blue. It is great to have you here, and it's even better to have the special guest that I have for you today. He's known throughout the country, maybe throughout the world, as an iconic actor, television and films, and an online as an incredibly insightful political commentator, maybe even a political activist. When he's not making films or TV shows, you can see him on the set of Fox News and other news programs, again, doing political commentary, where he's recognized immediately. The sight of his face brings to mind his most famous character. We are talking about the Man of Steel himself. Let's welcome Dean Cain to Strictly Speaking here on True Blue. Dean, welcome. It's good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm happy to be here, Bob. Thanks for having me.
You know what I love, Dean. As we get started here, throw up his Twitter bio for a second. His Twitter page. I love your bio. That in your bio you have father, filmmaker, freedom, family. I tweet only what I would say to your face. And then you include Superman's famous catchphrase or motto or whatever we call truth, justice, and the American way. It obviously means a lot to you, even today. Is it just because of the character, that you identified with for so long, or is it more personal that you put those words in there that are the Superman credo?
I think it's a combination of both. Truth, justice, and the American way um, is very telling to me. People are like, "Well, okay, truth, justice, good enough. What's the American way?" The American way for me stands for a number of things. Number one, individualism. The individual is more important than any sort of government telling you what to do. A competition to be able to compete fairly, the ability to make a lot of money if you do well, and have your own safety and security. Those are things that are the American way to me. Upward mobility for the economy, regardless of your religion, your color, your creed, things like that. Those sort of freedom things are so important to me. And I think the fact that you had the strongest being on Earth, Superman, and he's raised with small town American values, and that's what makes him good, kind, honest, and decent. That's so important. It's so telling that those values turned him into what he was, which was, the most caring and sort of giving person. Goodness encapsulated, not perfect by any means, but goodness and striving to be better. Just like in America, we're always striving to create a more perfect union. So if he was raised in some other, at the time it was, World War II when he was created, just, that sort of stuff that was going on. If they had put him in the, there's ones they've had where they had Superman raised in, in another country, another place, and he turned out very differently. So that's why I love truth, justice, and the American way. And I stand by it, even though they've gotten rid of that and for a more globalist message where they say truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. But I still stand with the American way. That's how I grew up with it. That's how I understand it. And I sort of explained why I love the American way, and I believe it's the greatest way out there.
Yeah, and that pisses me off, if I may just say it. It really look this way. You know where Superman was born, right? And I don't mean the character on
Cleveland.
Krypton. Right here, where I am right now in Cleveland, Ohio. That's exactly right. So it is an American creation. It's an American story. As you just pointed out. This alien creature essentially lands in Kansas. That's where his craft lands. So he's raised in those small town values, makes his way to Metropolis. The whole thing is an American creation. Why can't we keep him as the American way? Why does even a fictional character have to become a globalist like so many in our government?
Well, that's because the powers that be think that's the course of the future, and I would politely disagree with them. And I don't buy that. Let other cultures and countries do their thing. Trade with and do the things you can, but you're not going to. You can't you if you have there's a reason people are coming to America. There's a reason we're like the only country everyone is trying to get to, and it's that opportunity and the things that capitalism and what our Constitution represents. So that drives me nuts when we're having open borders and people are just streaming through who don't understand the culture here, don't understand the Constitution here, and why we have the greatest power and economic situation of anybody in the history, any country in the history of mankind. And it's the freest. It's not perfect. We're always striving for a more perfect
Of
union. We have our
course.
problems, but the
Yeah.
Constitution says ways to address that. If you don't agree with something, you want to create a constitutional amendment, you have the means to do so. And it's happened 27 times,
Yeah.
in our country. We've made some changes, and that's wonderful. But, I'm all about the American way. I bleed red, white, and blue. It's over my shoulder here. Yeah, it's something that I stand for, and I'm glad it's in my Twitter bio. Everything I say on that bio is true. I wouldn't tweet something I wouldn't say to someone's face. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't feel that way. I think Mike Tyson said it really well. Social media has gotten people so comfortable that they can say whatever they want to without someone punching them in the face. Tyson said it, not me,
It's true, and
but I'm
and
not
and we're gonna talk
like.
about social media and your presence on it too in a bit. First of all, I love the red, white, and blue behind you. I don't know if you can see it behind me or not as well. That flag, that folded flag,
Yeah, I
you
see
see
it.
part of that there? That flag was gifted to me by the United States Marines. It flew both over Baghdad, Iraq, and Kabul, Afghanistan, the same day. It was a very special thing. It was gifted to me just for support of the military. It means a lot to me too, and I'm going to ask you, Brian, remind me to ask him about red, white, and blue and a very special thing that just happened that's very, very aggravating. And I don't mean to dwell on the Superman part, but when you did Lois and Clark, and the reason I am is because it means so much to you. When they cast you for that, it kind of cast your lot in life, it sounds like. If you had not gotten that part, and maybe you can tell us about how you got that part, who else was up for it, how close it came, and so forth. Had you not gotten it, you're probably not sitting right here right now. You're probably leading a very different type of life, maybe with the different values, maybe, I don't know. Because this obviously has really played a big role in forging who you are. So tell me about getting that part. And do you agree you'd be a different guy right now if you didn't play that for, what was it, 4 years? 93 to 94?
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years.
If you didn't have those 4 years, you'd be in a different position. Tell me about that.
Probably. And there are people who've played it who have played the character who might feel differently about things. Not that I've seen, and I met with 5 of them last week, which was pretty cool, or 4 of them, 4 of the other guys.
Wait, who were they? Who were they? Obviously, Christopher Reeve was the first big screen guy. So Christopher's past.
Yeah, but he wasn't with us,
Right.
obviously.
So
So,
he's gone.
and Kirk Allen wasn't with us, but it was myself, it was Brandon Routh,
Okay.
it was Tyler Hecklin, it was Tom Welling, and it was Gerard Christopher who played Superboy.
Where was
Before I
Henry?
played
No
Superman.
Henry.
Henry, he was off doing British things. I don't. I like Henry's wonderful. He did a great job with his role, but I just didn't like that incarnation
Right.
of Superman. I thought that was really dark. That's Batman's world, and
Yeah.
Zack Snyder is a great filmmaker and wonderful, but I just didn't. That wasn't my favorite. But I met with Henry before and spoke with him. He's lovely. He's a lovely guy.
So some
And
of the other
uh,
guys, like you said,
he
played it
was
but don't have the same feeling about it you do. Like I said, you brought this with you from the '90s up to where you are now, and it's kind of helped forged you. How did you get that part, and how tough was it?
Well, there was the long audition process, I'll tell you that. But I'll tell you what, my values and what I stood for, what I believed in, have been solid for a long time. I remember a friend of mine in junior high school did a little comic where he had a guy like holding the American flag and like struggling under its weight, but fighting really hard for it. And I remember that. I was like, that's America to me. You know what I mean? And
Love
and,
that.
and I want that on my shoulders. So when I got cast as Superman, a lot of people who know me really well were like, of course you did. You know, did. Of course, yeah. My brother even was like, "Of course you did," and that was just one of those natural things.
Well, you could you
And
could you probably could have been cast by the headshot alone. I mean, you look the part from every car, every drawing, even the Super Friends that I used to watch on Saturday mornings. I love the Super Friends. I mean, you just
that's
look
what
the
I
part, right?
watched.
Yeah, right from the beginning. Go on.
Well, there's some fun stories in that too about that. Is that well, number one, I'm Japanese. My given name is Tanaka, but I never knew my biological father, and so there were some when I first was cast. People were like, "Hey, wait a minute, he's not entirely white. What is he? So we want Superman, not Sushi Man." Which, of course, I thought was hysterically funny. But America is an ideal. America isn't a race or a gender or anything. America and the values we hold dear are the values, and you can be anywhere, anybody. You're an American. So when I was reading for the part there, I saw, it's Superman. So there is everybody in Hollywood who's a young man was up for the role. And I was in these rooms with 30 other guys. And it's weird. You're in the room with 30 other guys all vying for the same role. And you're
Did
looking at
they
each
all
other
look the
like,
part too?
Of course, they all wanted the part.
I can
Oh, they looked
imagine.
at, yeah, they all
You
looked
know,
at, but different.
it's a universal guy
Everybody was a
thing.
little bit.
I'm sorry. Go.
What's that?
Let's finish. I was just going to say it's a universal guy thing. I think anyway. I'm a big guy. I'm a 6'3". When you walk into and I want to talk to you about football too. I played it and so did you, which is very cool.
Yeah,
When you walk into a room full of other guys, you cannot help consciously or subconsciously sizing everybody other up. And when you're there to be Superman, were you looking to see who's got bigger guns and who's going to fill out the suit better? Did you compare yourself to those guys? How hard was that?
of course. But that's acting in a nutshell. But I mean, you're playing Superman now, right?
Right.
So you're going in, and I saw guys much bigger than me. I saw guys much better looking. I saw guys shorter than me. It had everything under the sun. And a lot of the actors I recognized, though. I was like, oh dang, there's so and so, there's so and so, and they're fighting for this role just like me. And it was just
Any
it was an
any
odd
names we would
experience. Now
know?
I was the first person they brought in to see the producers. Yes, but I'll save that till the end because it came down to me and another
Okay.
name that you do know.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of other folks in there, and then you also hear stories later. Hey, I was down to the last three. It was us four that were down for it, and like I don't know the answer to that. Who was really down at the end? Except for I do know the last two. So we'd go in there, audition, and so on and so forth. But the first time I heard about the show, I thought it's never going to work for television. How do you do Superman on television? It hadn't been done. There hadn't been all these superhero shows like there are now. Now
Mhm.
every third show is a superhero. So I was like, this is going to be terrible. I hope they do a good job. The idea sounds terrible. Let me read the script. Back in that day, I had to drive out, pick up the script, drive home, and I read the script. I thought, oh, this is different. It's different because Clark Kent's the guy, and Superman is the disguise he puts on, as you saw in the opening clip, to go out and be able to do good things, and then be able to come back and live as a normal human being, which is what we all sort of want to do. I mean, that's you want to be able to live a normal, great life, but if you have these special powers, you'd like to be able to help, and that's what Superman decided to do. When I saw that that's what the idea for the story was, I thought this is pretty cool. I like this, and I can identify with this. So I was the first person they saw when the producers got together to start seeing actors. It was myself in a room. I walked in. There's Deborah Joy Levine. There's Ron, who just passed recently. God bless him. He was amazing. He was the pilot creator. He did Hill Street Blues and so many other shows and was so good. Moonlighting. I mean, he was just so fantastic. I give him so much credit for me being able to play that role because he really taught me how to do it. To be honest, he set the tone. So I came in there with just those two and myself and somebody on a little camera. I said, I read the script last night. I thought it was really cool. I thought I have my own sort of take on it. And he goes, okay, well, let's see it. We read the lines. He said, okay, thank you. End of story. I thought, all right. I thought that went well, but never heard anything for a couple of weeks. Usually you hear something,
Mhm.
but they had to go through, thousands of actors. So I was the first guy. And then I was out at a party with my buddy who knew some casting person at Warner Brothers. It was actually called Lorimar Television back then because it was the dark ages. It was just so long ago. And she said, hey, they seem to really like your buddy for that Superman thing. I was like, what? He said that, hey, they said they like you for that. I'm like, that was a month ago. Next thing I know, phone calls were coming in. I'm going in to start reading with other actors. You'd come into you'd come in. There'd be some Superman over here. There'd be some Lois Lanes over there, some Jimmy Olsen's here, and you can see who those guys were too. And it was interesting. And I was like, oh, here's these guys. I can tell the Superman. They're right there. There's the Jimmy Olsen's, and those are certainly Lois Lanes. Okay. And then they started pairing us up and doing different things. And it was a long, I think 6 or 7 auditions where I had to come in and do things and do things. Then it came down to you, and people don't understand this. If you're going to go do a network show and you're competing for the show, you have to sign a contract. Your contract is signed before you go in to audition for that final casting. That final thing, you have to set your deal. So you know the parameters of your deal. So you know how much money's at stake too. And for a guy who's just trying to make a living, you're like, oh, the nervousness, the nerves can
So it's
overcome you.
nervous enough going in there, but now you know this is how much is on the line if I blow this or if I'm
Yeah,
not
and you
the
sign a
best.
6-year deal.
That's brutal.
It's a 6-year deal. So that's how
Wow.
much you have to, because they want to hold you down. They want to lock
Right.
you into it.
Right.
So we went down to it, and the last 2 Supermen were myself and a gentleman named Kevin Sorbo.
No.
Yeah.
So Kevin, I
Who
had
you,
known
of course,
Kevin
worked
from the
with
gym.
God's Not Dead. We'll talk about that later too, but
That,
I
yep.
didn't know. So Hercules and Superman, how it ended up. I'm sorry, finish that.
And Kevin's blonde, right? He's a blonde-haired guy. Now,
Right.
Kevin, great shape and just big and strong, good 6'4" himself. And just, I'd seen him in the gym, when we were just training for just separately. We happened to have gone to the same gym. And I was like, that dude is just jacked. He is just solid and just ripped. And he worked out hard. I was like, man, I don't want to fight the guy for it, but he's blonde. Superman can't be blonde. And I heard his audition too. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going a whole different direction. But we went to network, myself and he, and then Terry Hatcher and two other Lois Lanes, and I ended up getting the deal, and it was wonderful. But I apparently, and this was said by Les Moonves's wife on a talk show I was on with her, when I walked in, Les looked up and goes, "All right, if this kid can talk, he's got the job," because he thought I looked like Superman,
Right.
which I appreciate. Les, I kissed the ring for Mr. Moonves. Les has been nothing but wonderful to me, and just have been a fantastic guy in my career. So I ended up getting the role, and it was a big deal. And I knew that my life was going to change. But you can't. It's like if you tell a kid, if you reach in the fire, it's hot. It's going to burn you. You don't know I'm going to get burned. You put your hand in, and until you feel the burn, you don't know. Well, you can't tell anybody or get anybody ready for the kind of attention and scrutiny and pressure that you're under to lead a series at 26 years old, especially in that day when it was just 3 shows, 3 networks on the air.
That's
so
right.
It was a lot to deal with. And it helped that I had been a professional athlete. It helped that I was an All-American football player and I'd worked with discipline and been under a lot of stress and pressure, game time pressure, et cetera. That stuff really helped me a lot playing that role and accepting all.
Oh, wow, that's a phenomenal story. By the way, I was curious about one thing when you said you went through like the 6 auditions when they paired some of the Supermen and with some of the Lois Lanes. Did you pair with Terry for any of those auditions?
Great question. No.
No.
Until I was cast, and then that following Monday, I was paired with the other 2 Lois Lanes. And then the following Monday, they had me come in and redo it in front of network with 10 different Lois Lanes.
Wow.
And the scene was Lois Lane is inebriated. She had been out. She had a breakup with her French photographer boyfriend, and she's coming in and tries to seduce Clark. So she opens the door, immediately plants a big kiss on his lips, and then proceeds to try to seduce him. And Clark can't do it because she's under the influence, and he'd love to, but he can't. And he's so moral and good. 10 times in a row, I had to do that scene with 10 different women.
I was going to say.
And I was terrified that they were going to go, we cast the wrong kid. He can't handle this job. They didn't see it. They seemed to think I did okay. And the last girl of the bunch was Terry. And she was the last one to audition. But before her audition, they said, Miss Hatcher wants you to come in and run lines with her beforehand. None of the other girls did that, right? So I said, okay, of course, sure. So I went in, opened the door to come in, and I said, hi. And she said, you don't like me, do you? And I was like, well, I don't, what do you mean? She said, we were at network together, auditioning for this, and you never spoke to me. I was like, I was terrified. I didn't speak to anybody. I was just trying to get a job. The way she started it with, you don't like me, do you? Put me off kilter, right? I was off balance a little already. And that right there, honestly, is the relationship of Lois and Clark. And so that part of the reason it worked. She's a fantastic actress. She did a great job. She earned it. I think she's still the best Lois Lane.
I was going to say, even if you hadn't been terrified by what you were in, the magnitude of it all, I'd be terrified to talk to Terry Hatcher too. She's gorgeous. I mean, honestly, it was such a phenomenal catch for you to actually get to work with her. And that's great. Let's move past that a little bit because you brought up football again. And maybe some of your, loyal fans know this, but some casual fans don't know. First of all, you're Ivy League educated. Second of all, you were a badass defensive back. You still hold records? Do you still hold single season and career interception records at Princeton? Flex on that.
I hold Princeton records for most interceptions in a single season, most interceptions in a career. I hold 2 NCAA records for most interceptions in a single season per game average. Because we only play 10 games.
So you have 12 picks in 10 games.
12 picks in 10 games and 22 in 30 games, wow. Which is also the the per game average. So I hold those with little asterisks in the FCS record books for the NCAA.
Now-
and it's, I graduated 35 years ago. So
Now, when we hear Deion Sanders, the greatest shutdown quarterback of all time, didn't have a lot of interceptions because nobody tested him. They're testing the hell out of you to get 22 picks in 30 games. Why did they keep coming at you, and why are you still ball hawking them, and they're still doing it?
Well, by the time I was a senior, they did not throw my way, but we would play certain robber coverages. We'd do different things to sort of free me up, and they didn't know where I was going to be. But my sophomore year, I had 5 picks. Junior year, 5 picks. So, I was getting there. But senior year, everything slowed down for me. I could see everything. The game made sense. I studied so much game film. They would try to throw away from me, but I would thwart them. We had a few coverages that allowed me to sort of freelance a little bit. And that was, they couldn't prepare for that. And so if they were throwing it all, and they didn't throw it all like the way they throw now.
Oh, no.
Gosh, that happened. I'd have had 40 picks. But
Different world.
we really cool coverages that allowed me to be able to step in and make a lot of picks and be places where they didn't know. And I could disguise the coverages real well because my coach, Steve Verbit, who's still at Princeton,
Really?
he worked me to the bone. Did you ever see Whiplash, the movie Whiplash?
I did not.
Whiplash is where Miles Teller plays a drummer, and J.K. Simmons plays this instructor that is just so hard on him and so rough. That's what Coach Verbit was like for me, but it helped turn me into the player that I was and the All-American that I was, and got me ready to see everything that I saw. I knew what was coming 85% of the time, just by practice and preparation. So preparation makes you ready.
So you ended up with the Jets, right? Were you drafted or signed free agent?
Okay, not the Jets. Don't you get me. Buffalo Bills.
Oh, the Bills. My bad. Same division. Right division. My bad. And right state.
It'd be like me telling you, as a Cleveland Browns fan, that you went to Cincinnati.
Okay, my bad. You're right, because that is a big rivalry. But what happened? Because you got hurt, right? Yeah, before you even had a chance to really make something happen at that level.
I was injured in camp, and didn't think it was a big injury. I was just nagging, and it kept swelling up and going down, And just before the first preseason game, which was against Houston, and I really wanted to play in that game because I know what happens for me in a game time situation. So you have guys that are really great at practice. They do a good job in practice, but the game comes and they're just in the wrong spot. Right. Something doesn't work right. The games for me was home. Like, I loved game time. Let's go, get me in game time. So I was really excited to be playing against Houston. I thought once I play that they're never going to let me go. So I was a free agent, so I didn't have a high draft choice or anything like that. There was no draft capital invested in me.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew once I got in the game that they would go, okay, this kid's special. He's got that thing. That's what was in my head. And so I pushed real hard to try to get to play in the Houston game. But they said, no, your knee, you're going to have surgery now. And we'll waive you after your surgery. And, if you don't get picked up, we're going to bring you back next year. And I said, all right, I could use a year to get stronger and healthier anyway. Right. My surgery. But it turned out to be a career-ending knee injury. I blew away a piece of my femoral, the head of my femoral, the head, all that cartilage on the head of your femoral bone that sits in there. Right. My lateral meniscus was gone, and there were just some defects and some problems. And they said, if you want to play basketball with your kid when you're 40, find something else to do. I thought, 40? That's 100 years away from now. I'm now 57 and still can play basketball with my son, so it's good.
And 40 is still 100 years away, but in the other direction now.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what year are we talking that you had that injury in that camp? What year?
88, 89 season. So I was a rookie with Thurman Thomas.
Okay.
We
lost. Trying to figure out if there was Jim Kelly, Thurman, Andre Reed, the whole group.
Oh, we have 7 Hall of Famers or something like that.
Bruce was Bruce
that
there
was
then?
The time. So
Bruce Smith there.
Pardon me?
Was Bruce there at that time?
Oh yeah, Bruce Smith.
Yeah,
sure.
Because I remember the run in the 90s. Their run of Super Bowls in the 90s. So
it started right after that.
Right.
The year after my rookie year, the next 4 years were Super Bowl years. And
how much does that suck to know that you're one knee injury away from being on those teams that are going to Super Bowls? Maybe. I mean, it could have been.
Yeah, but that's part of our game.
Yeah.
That's the game, though. Everybody has that. You look at guys right now, even Brees Hall getting hurt last year as a rookie. And look at these great players. And there's so many great players who just were it's one snap and you're done.
Yep.
And it happens to all of us. Even this, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, Diggs, they're great corner in practice. That's where I got hurt, in practice too. And you never know. Trevon Diggs did that. It changed the course of the whole thing. Yep. Joe Burrow's out for the season now.
Deshaun Watson is too.
You look at Watson's gone too. I mean, that's just what happens. But those guys have all the draft capital, so they'll get another chance to come back. I wish I'd gotten that. Didn't.
You mean you didn't have a $230 million guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson has right now?
I think I had a $23, maybe $23 or $24 guaranteed contract.
Just a few zeros off. Yeah, that's not bad. Now you grew up in Michigan, right? Though, so are you Lions guy? I mean, right? You were born in Michigan.
I was born in Michigan at Selfridge Air Force Base. I left Michigan when I was 3. Although I do like the Lions, and I
was going to say, yeah, they're 8-2, and I'm wondering how in the hell that ever happened. I mean, the Lions and the Browns were like kind of the two most bottom-dwelling non-Super Bowl participants since I've been alive in '67. I mean,
they got a shot this year.
Yeah.
That's it. They bought into Dan Campbell's system. He's a hard ass. He does it right. He built the team right. Jared Goff has had a resurgence.
Yep.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is crazy good. You got 2 running backs that are phenomenal in Montgomery and Gibbs. They got put together a stout defense, anchored on that corner by Aiden Hutchinson. They've drafted really well. They've been smart, and they built a culture of tough guys and winning.
So you left Michigan at age 3, but you're still watching the Lions pretty closely, you said, based on everything you just knew. So where'd you grow up, and who'd you root for when you were growing up?
I grew up, in Mount Clemens, but I left there when I was 3, and I grew up in Malibu, California. Yeah,
so you're
almost exactly the same as Detroit.
So were you a Rams guy?
Yeah, my dad liked the Rams, so of course I liked the Rams. But the first game I ever remember watching was 1972 when the Dolphins won the Super Bowl and had the perfect 17-0 season. And everybody was rooting for the Dolphins, so I liked Bob Greasy and Jim Kick, and I thought, Paul Warfield. I was like, that's my team. And then it changed around. I liked Staubach a lot. I liked the Cowboys. I bounced around. I liked the Rams.
Okay.
I considered going to Buffalo. Didn't love the Bills. Nothing about the Bills. Not until they called. But I loved sports growing up. I loved watching sports, and I loved the lessons you learn about life from playing sports. There's always somebody bigger and stronger. You're always going to get knocked down. It's the quote that Denzel Washington said, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. And that's the game. And it's going to happen. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get beat up. You're going to get up again and work harder and work harder. That's it. Outwork them.
Yeah.
And that's a good metaphor for life.
Oh yeah. It's the same metaphor that Stallone gave in Rocky Balboa. Remember the famous scene? It's not how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. I've always remembered that. And Denzel.
Beautiful line.
Yeah, absolutely. And you live that. So let's go back to college for a minute though, not about football anymore, but about what's going on. The Ivy Leagues are a wreck. And I'm talking about wokeness on steroids. I mean, it used to be, like Berkeley, and you could pick the worst of the worst in terms of like the really radical campuses. Kent State here in Ohio is certainly one of them as well. There's a small college called Oberlin College, which is one of those too. But the Ivies, the Ivies, and what's going on with, at Harvard and at Cornell and at Penn and at Columbia and at Princeton, particularly over what's going on in the Middle East right now, all of this pro-Hamas, pro-terror stuff, and this wave of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. That's just in the last month and a half since the terrible attacks on October 7th, Dean. But even prior to that, just the incredible wokeness. What's going on? Was it like that when you were at Princeton? Anything close?
There was nothing like that when I was at Princeton. Nothing at all.
Why?
And
what changed? Those things why are they? I mean, why is this?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think that you've had a lot of people pushing, an indoctrination of sorts. And I think, that sounds like a broken record. A lot of people have said that, but that's what's going on. People have been pushing that and teaching that. And it's pernicious though. It hasn't all happened at once. It's been a little bit by a little bit by a little bit, and slowly eroding these things, slowly teaching these things. And my son just went to college, but he went to High Point University in North Carolina. They're a God family country school. American flags are everywhere.
Beautiful.
They've got all influential people, that you can sit next to on a little bench. There's a whole person. It's Rosa Parks. It's Ben Franklin. it's George Washington, it's the, Frederick Douglass. It's these wonderful Americans, and they're teaching those values. They host Veterans Day and do these wonderful things there at the school that I support. What's going on? I think just they've gotten to this place where they're just indoctrinating kids and thinking and teaching. It's like we're overeducated. It's like I travel to these places. I don't think everybody does. I go to Israel. I go to Jordan. I go to China. I go everywhere. I'm all over the world, and I see how people live, and I see how these regimes run their regimes. And the people who are saying things, Hamas, what they did, watch that 47 minutes of footage that shows them gleefully killing and
Did you see
torturing
it
and
all?
killing and
Did you see it?
I've seen a lot of it. It is so horribly disturbing. I've been to war. I went to Iraq, and that flag is from Iraq. I was there. I was in Baghdad. I was in Fallujah. I was all over the
Well,
place.
you beat me. I just got the flag. I got the T-shirt.
I was there visiting the troops. I was there visiting the troops in 2005, and it was unbelievable. And but I've been to these places. I've seen these things. I've had the conversations with politicians and mayors and prime ministers and kings, and I've been really fortunate to sit and talk to these people. I know of what I speak, and what is happening there. The people who are, it's that same thing. It's like that same group. I feel like this is really organized in some weird way. The same BLM, Antifa people, Occupy Wall Street people. They're all, I think it's like the same group, and somehow funded by this is my opinion, somehow funded by the same sort of shadowy group that pushes that anarchy, anti-Americanism, stuff on everybody. And they find this cause to jump on. What Hamas did to the innocent civilians in Israel on October 7th was nothing other than good versus evil, humanity versus evil. And what those Hamas terrorists did, if anybody says anything differently, they're out of their minds. I've met with Israelis who have family members who are now captive. My friend Moran, who I met with in New York just after it all happened, his sister, brother-in-law, and 3 kids under the age of 6, all taken by Hamas, and they're there now. If that had happened, you do that stuff, you do that to my son or my family, I'm scorched earth.
Yeah. I'm the same way, and I can't imagine it.
But people don't understand is, Israel was kind of fractured at the time too. You listen, good times
politically
create soft men, and you come up with things are so good here that people don't understand what it's like to have to suffer or work for something or struggle for existence, or here we're worried about misgendering or giving the wrong pronoun, and that's stupid, ridiculous. It's like watching Hunger Games. The people living in the districts are the regular people. They're struggling with life and things. But then you got those people living in the city who the big giant fake teeth and all the stuff and purple hair and all those things. Like, they're not worried about the everyday problems because they're living in this weird fantasy land. And that's kind of what it feels like going on here now. And I feel like those are the same people that are teaching, stand with Hamas and, Israel. I'm a history major. Israelis are not occupying that they've had that land. They've been in that land for 3,000 years. King David. I mean, what are they even talking about? Plus, any land, anywhere, even here, are we occupiers here in the United States because we came in and we're not the indigenous peoples? What were the Indian tribes doing against each other? Fighting,
and taking each other's land. I mean, yeah. I mean, every piece of land that has ever been settled in America or in world history was fought for. It's the way it goes. Yeah, in world history, there's no question about it. I want to go back to the Ivy Leagues.
You got me on I went on a big tangent there.
That's
sorry.
okay. No, this is fascinating. You can keep on talking, but there's so many follow-ups that I have. I want to squeeze them in when I can. You saw a lot of the 47 minutes of the atrocities. I feel like that's what it would take to show at Princeton and Cornell and all of these schools of all of these people who are, from the river to the sea and all of the nonsense that they're doing that are pro-Hamas. They say pro-Palestinian as if there's a big distinction, and there really isn't. But I feel like even if you showed them that and made them watch it, first of all, they would not. But even if they did, they've been so brainwashed to be taught that's fake. That's fake. That's not real. I mean, the Council on American Islamic Relations, they're out there now and saying, oh, those 40 beheaded babies that they talked about, that's a total lie. It's a made up thing. It didn't happen.
Well, CARE's
you try to convince these people by showing them the reality, and they're still going to deny the existence of it. And that's how far gone they are up here, Dean. And it's and I'm wondering, to what end? What is the goal of brainwashing all of these little robots like this? What is the end game for those who are doing it?
Well, I'm sure they'd love to destroy America. I'm sure that would be the end goal for
a lot of people like that. What they don't understand is they talk about Donald Trump being a fascist and authoritarian. They have no idea. It's when we look back at World War II now and we say, how did this happen? How could we have allowed that? How could the world have allowed 6 million Jews to be killed in camps like Auschwitz, which I visited and been to and brought my son there and everything? And how could we have allowed that? It seems barbaric and insane. We just allowed it again, and you're seeing how people can dismiss that and say it's not real. You see it everywhere. In World War II, the Nazis tried to hide their war crimes. October 7th, Hamas gleefully live streamed it all. It's all there. So, you do see the Pallywood guy, the one dude who's injured on the table. Now he's a firefighter. Now they create fake stuff within Gaza, and I've seen that plenty. And has there been stuff like that? Yeah, sure, probably. But this stuff, it's impossible. There's just no way, and anybody can verify, and it's there. And I think it's willful ignorance. People don't want to see it. They don't want to believe it. They want to say it's not real. Oh, they're occupiers. They deserve it. They're just wrong on every single front. It is humanity versus evil, and it's not the Palestinian people. It's the Hamas leadership. It's why the leadership doesn't live
to a degree, because I keep hearing this and over and over and over again, and I keep telling people to be very, very careful not to make too big of a distinction, because, and literally just on November 14th, so this is a few days after that, as of the time of our taping here, Dean, but an Arab World Research organization did a survey. 75% of Palestinians surveyed on November 14th, so we're talking about 5 weeks after the atrocities, say they support Hamas and they support what happened on October 7th. They literally...
Were those Gazans or West Bank?
75% of Palestinians in Gaza. Not West Bank,
Gaza, okay.
Gaza, which of course is where all of these things are being carried out. And so that to me says, and I'm not suggesting that children are a part of that survey, and I'm not suggesting we shouldn't feel bad if children are harmed in Israel's self-defense exercises. And that's what I call these. These are not offensive, they're self-defensive exercises in Gaza, because the Hamas leadership has said time and again, we are coming back again and again and again. They're not interested in a ceasefire. So why should Israel be?
Agreed, 100%. So what I will say to that is that when I say Palestinians, I'm not talking just Gaza. I'm talking West Bank. I'm talking Jordan. Palestinians. So when I say that they're not there, it's Hamas, and it's what they teach. The UNRWA schools, the UN refugee schools, they teach hate. Hate is not something that we come by naturally. You have a Palestinian baby and an Israeli baby, you raise them together here in America, they're going to be best friends and brothers and sisters and love each other, and they're going to probably share the same values as they're raised with. They're not going to know to hate each other because they're not taught it. The UNRWA schools, they teach this hate. There are millions of Palestinian Arabs who live in Israel, who are Israeli, and who don't condone this at all. That hate is taught, and it's awful and stuff. The UN don't even start me on the UN. The UN is corrupt. They haven't said a word about the horrible events on the 7th.
Why are they still here?
Why
do we still have designated them? Why do we have them in New York? Why are we 75% of the funding of the United Nations? Israel is a staunch ally of the United States. The UN hates Israel, and thus by extension hates the United States, and yet we're still funding it and we're still housing it on American soil.
Hey, listen, when the head of the Human Rights Council or whatever they have is Iran.
Yeah, that's a great point. Dean, let's talk about social media. I want to show people one of my favorite tweets in the history of Twitter. And by the way, I hate Twitter. I hate all social media. We're going to talk about that too. But you had one of the best all-time Twitter moments ever with this exchange. And I want to put this up on the screen right now so that everybody can see that. Can we enlarge that a little bit? Let's make that a little bigger if we can so everybody can see that nice and clearly. You are responding to a tweet from Clown World that shows two of the most narcissistic guys on the internet who love themselves so much they're constantly filming themselves and trying to monetize their own images as they dress in women's clothes. Your line at the top is one of the best ever. I think neither of you are girls. Somebody named Zoe Beth blah, 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 says, yeah, and you were never Superman either. Your reply broke the internet as far as I know. Correct. I pretended. I would give you a standing ovation. Now, this was December of last year, so it's about a year old, that tweet is. I just saw it like a month ago. I shared it on my Instagram or my Facebook page or something like that, and it just blew up, and people who had never seen it before. Dean, that was one of the best moments ever. You literally just crystallized it all. Exactly. You can pretend just like you wore a blue suit with a red cape. You weren't really Superman. They can wear wigs and knit lipstick, and they're still not going to be women. And I don't know if that's going to offend people, but I don't give a rat's red, you know what. And I know you don't either. That moment was enormous.
Yeah, it's really funny on
social media. You never know what it's going to be or what might blow up in your face or whatever the case. But I had watched their video together. They 2087 of being a girl, and this, I've got, my mom's a woman, and my sister, and I like to date women, and I respect women, I really do. Those are dudes. Those are two dudes talking about being girls, and I just at the end they're like, "Well, what do you think?" And so that's why I said I think neither of you are girls because you're not girls. I'm sorry, you're not women. You're certainly not girls. Okay, I think of girls as younger,
Right.
like younger, and then women as older. And what is a woman? A woman is an adult female human. Okay, and they're adult humans, but they're not female.
Right.
No.
I posted a side by side earlier this week, in fact, of Robin Williams. Love Robin Williams forever. But I just posted a picture of Robin Williams on one side, and next to him was another picture of Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire. And
Sure.
this one says dude, and this one says still dude. You can put on women's clothes, whether it be for a role or for your life, enjoyment, whatever it is, and it's still you have not changed what you are. And through radical surgeries, it still doesn't change what you are at your core, your cellular, DNA level, chromosome level, and so on and so forth. Dean, why do you think this has happened at this moment in time? This weird trans nation, this psychosis, this social contagion that is just impacting so many young people. This didn't happen 20 years ago. This happened in the last, 5 or 6 or 7 years that it really just went on steroids. Why? What's happening?
Well, it goes back to that thing. Really good times. We're back in the Hunger Games. These are the guys who are hosting the Hunger Games, and then the regular people are off fighting to death. That's what it's like to me. It's times are so good. They don't have to worry about putting, food on the table. I think it was recently revealed that the one in the pink there, Dylan Mulvaney, was paid, that whole Bud Light controversy was paid like $185,000 or something, 175 that, whatever that's insane. Right. But they were trying to reach out to that demographic or do something, which was a huge mistake for Anheuser-Busch, obviously. Cost them billions.
Big time.
But I mean, the thing about it is these times are so good that they can worry about pronouns. They can worry about this and that and the other thing. And it's a weird time. What we would call, what was it, sexual dysphoria or whatever that was, or,
gender dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria. That's now celebrated as normal, and women competing against, or men competing against women in sports. I mean, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. If you want that, fine. Then there's just the NBA. Period.
So that's a great point. That's a great point. That's right. Ladies, try out for the men's teams. Try out for the ladies. Yep. Let's see what happens. And let it happen. So to me, this isn't happening to our culture without social media. If these two clowns that we were just talking about with from your little tweet response there, did not have, little cameras and the ability to reach all of these people to quote unquote influence them. They're just two freaks who probably aren't even doing this. They're not just walking down the street in an age of pre-internet, but particularly social media. So let me ask you, because you use the hell out of social media, 750 some thousand followers. I use it very, very much less than that, but you use it. Is social media a net good or a net negative for the country, for the world?
I would like to bring in my consultant, Mr. Elon Musk. Elon, come on. I think it's so, the net question is hard. I mean, there's so many positive things to it and so many negative things to it. I hope and pray that it's a positive, but I see so many negatives. Let's put it this way. My 12-year-old godkids and my 12-year-old niece, how they're having to negotiate in this world is completely different than what we did. I look at the stuff I did in college, and listen, I was no angel, no choir boy. I did some stupid stuff, and that's where you're supposed to do it. growing up making some mistakes. Nowadays, you can't make mistakes, and you're getting information overload, and who do you
Mhm.
trust? And then you got government people like the United States government trying to say, we'll create a board of censorship for you to tell you what's true and what's not true. That is terrifying. That's George Orwell stuff. So Elon Musk has been a hero for me for the way he's opened up Twitter and exposed all the censoring they were doing. I think I'd love to believe social media is a net good and a net positive, that all these things can be seen at once. But right now, I'd say it's not.
Yeah, and and you're right about Elon, and he did a lot to kind of fix things, I guess. But and you mentioned the U.S. government too. It's not just the U.S. government and censoring things; it is the U.S. government and big tech and advertisers
Oh yeah,
and
Polluting.
big China not censoring things but promoting things by way of algorithms. They're targeting your 8-year
and
old, your
TikTok.
9-year old, your 10-year old that are on TikTok and that are on Instagram and somebody that they're literally steering things to them. So much we were asking about trans. So much of the stuff that these kids are first learning isn't even in their schools where they're being peer pressured by, well, peer and teacher pressured in many cases, but they're learning it first on social media influencers. The first face they see is somebody like Dylan Mulvaney. So China knows this, and they're pushing these things on people, and they are literally trying to break the United States down from inside by going after the youngest generation of people, and that's why I call it a net negative, even though it can be used for positive things. It is just so destructive, Dean. I think it's breaking down the family, it's breaking down the culture, it's breaking down everything that we built before the advent of this digital age.
Yeah, I just think we're at such a
Sort of in the Wild West right now, I think still. And, and I do believe that the stuff that China is doing, like on TikTok, is pernicious. It's trying to break down the fabric of the United States. But if you go on TikTok in China, it's not the same content.
You're spot on, by the way. They do not let Chinese kids see what they push on American kids, through all of their algorithms. And the American consumers are just more than willing to do this, and they sit there and they scroll their day away. Let me ask you this too, Dean. When I say it's a net negative too, it
Yeah.
keeps kids cooped up in their homes with their hands on their phones, and social interaction is gone. There is no socialization because when you were a teenager and you wanted to meet a girl, you had to actually go up to somebody at a party or go up to somebody at a school dance or whatever and talk to them, or a stranger at a pizza shop or the mall, and, hey, can I get your number? And it was intimidating, but it taught you how to socialize. Now you just got to go on Hinge, swipe left or swipe right, see if we hook. And there's no socialization. How is that good for humanity? How is it good for American kids?
It's not. It's absolutely not. And so that comes down to the family unit and parents. Parents have to police it. Parents have to be the first line of defense and say, this is healthy for you, and this is what you can do, and this is unhealthy for you, and this is what you shouldn't do. And it has to start at home.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that far too many kids don't have two parents in the home. Dads aren't there. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask you about this, just the kind of the corollary between your own situation. You grew up not knowing your father, just like Clark Kent didn't know Jor-El, which I thought was kind of funny. Being Superman, but taking it to a more serious level now. How big of a problem is it, the fatherlessness epidemic? My friend Larry Elder talks about it all the time. Said it's literally an epidemic of fatherlessness, and they can't be there to monitor what everything their kids are watching. Moms try, single, but without two parents on the job, they can't monitor everything they're watching. They can't make sure they're going to class. They can't make sure they're doing their homework or anything else that they need to succeed.
no, the fatherless epidemic is
Massive. It is massive. It is giant, and it is a horrible, horrible scourge on our current society. I was adopted by a very wonderful father who was also a farmer from the Midwest, actually South Dakota. He raised me with small town values. I just like Jonathan Kent. My father did that, and that was wonderful. I was raised in a two-parent household. I raised my son myself, so I was the disciplinarian and I had to be both roles as much as I had to, and that was very difficult. And I'm sure he suffered as a result for some of those things. But the epidemic of fatherlessness is huge, and I think, and Larry says it well. Your friend Larry Elder and my friend, he, the government has incentivized women to depend on the government and not on a family member, not on a husband. They've incentivized them getting a divorce, splitting up. Having a child out of wedlock has been incentivized, and Larry can tell you the stats on what it was like in the early 1950s to now in the black community, especially. So it's terrible. It is an incentive to not have the family unit together, and that's because they'll pay for it. The U.S. government, come be dependent on the government, and we'll take care of you. Have more kids, in fact, and we'll pay you even more money. It's horribly destructive. That's why I've been such a present father, such a vocal father, and maybe that's part of what got me speaking out on issues, is realizing that government is not the answer. That's why President Reagan was one of my favorite, presidents in the world. I got a chance to meet him and spend some time with him, and he said it well. Government isn't the solution. Government is the problem.
That's exactly right. Most dangerous words in the English language, he said, are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." That is a terrible, terrible thing. So we're breaking up a little bit and we're a little short on time anyway. Let's talk about what you're doing now. We reminisced about football. We reminisced about Superman. We reminisced about everything you had growing up. What are you doing now? I know you've got movies in the works as well. I know you're changing the way you invest because of Bidenomics wrecking our economy. You're investing in precious metals now. What are you doing? What's going on?
Well, I couldn't be more busy. I'm doing movie after movie. I've got a graphic novel coming out right here, Dean Cain, All-American Lawman. People can go on bigmancomics.com and pre-order and buy that. Help us out, do that. Some artists who left DC Comics who is doing this with me. It's great. A throwback to the old 80s kind of movies, good versus evil, straightforward, strong families, ties and units, stuff like that. Right now I'm hosting Masters of Illusion season 10 on the CW. I'm about to go host the Hollywood Christmas Parade. I've got a bunch of movies out streaming right now. Condition of Return, Bringing Back Christmas, on and on and on. I've probably made 10 movies this year. I'm reprising my character on God's Not Dead from the first one. This is the fifth one. He hasn't learned anything. He's still as awful as ever, perhaps. So I'm working like a dog in the film industry, making all kinds of different projects. I'm working out. This is something that your listeners might enjoy. I'm working with a group called True Play Games. So trueplaygames.com. It's a Christian themed video game company, but it's closed in that, because I work as a police officer. I'm a deputy sheriff in Frederick County, Virginia, and I work with Crimes Against Children Foundation. So basically all the online predators and people who are trying to contact your kids via social media, via TikTok, via Xboxes, you name it, they go on those gaming sites and they try to talk to these kids and they create these false identities and lure these kids out to be, molested and kidnapped and things like that. On True Play Games, you're getting sort of biblical stories, but it's a closed network. No one can come in and talk to your kid, so they're safe.
I need to introduce you to somebody because you know who else is on our network here on True Blue? Chris Hansen, who's actually the co-owner here. Chris Hansen is taking down predators, still doing it here with the show called Takedown. You guys need to talk because that's exactly.
We do, because because the difference between Chris and I is I'm a sworn deputy sheriff. I can arrest people and Mirandize them and anything they say can and will be used against them in a court of law. I'll talk to Chris in a heartbeat about that because this show is amazing for that. Everybody knows To Catch a Predator. And so that was the original installment, and bless it. Good for him. Well done.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's great. We'll do it here. We'll do a three-way call. We got to get a better connection so we can get rid of all of this interference. But we'll have Chris sitting here. We'll have you, or if you want to come to Cleveland, it'll be a phenomenal thing. You guys could meet, strategize, do some stings together. Chris will set him up. You walk in and arrest him. We could have an awful lot of fun there. That's phenomenal.
Perfect.
Takedowns with Chris Hansen and Superman himself. Dean, listen, man, I appreciate.
Get the last thing in if I got time. We were talking Bidenomics.
Oh yeah. Right. How you battling the economy?
I'm coming to you from my house in Las Vegas, in Nevada right now. I left California because of Gavin Newsom's policies, because of Bidenomics, because of the tax structure. It's awful. And so people ask me all the time, you're an actor, are you poor now? Whatever. No, I've made really great investments in real estate, which I've done very well. And I own 4 homes right now. And there's for that. And I've done really well working with Genesis Gold Group and investing in precious metals. And people are always like, well, how do I get into that? You talk about that all the time. And clearly I see you're doing well financially. What is the thing? And I say, if you have an IRA, if you have any sort of retirement account, that IRA, that fund is probably investing in things that you don't support and you don't even have a clue what you're invested in. And the stock market is up and down. Bidenomics, printing out trillions of dollars based on nothing. It's not backed up by gold. We used to be on the gold standard. So I always encourage people to go to Genesis Gold, genesisgoldgroup.com. Check out Genesis. They're a biblically oriented company. They treat you with kindness and respect, and they'll explain to you how precious metals are a great investment, great to hedge against this inflation, printing of money, and the up and down nature of our stock market because of these big corporations. It's a great way to protect your wealth.
It's good advice. It's good advice. And I'm glad you mentioned, by the way, that you left California because of everything that's going on there, and because of Governor Newsom. Are you concerned? Because we talked politics very briefly about this. Do you think Biden is going to make it to the general election, or do you think they're going to have to hand the baton to somebody like Gavin Newsom?
I expect Gavin Newsom to try and make all of the United States as bad as California.
I was going to say, it's horrible. California is awful. People are fleeing. You're fleeing. So many people have left. Ben Shapiro on Daily Wire left and went to Tennessee. So many people have fled. And yet we're going to bring that and put them in the White House? I can't imagine that could happen.
It's literal insanity. It's insanity. And then, Xi Jinping comes out to visit San Francisco, and so he cleans up San Francisco in a day.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Tells you that they're doing it on purpose. Tells you that it's on purpose.
Yes,
and
it is.
And America, do not fall for it. He looks like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, and that's all I can ever see. And his policies are the same. Absolutely murderous for the United States. That's
a great comparison. I hadn't really made that connection, but he does look like that. Well, you look like Superman. You did when you auditioned. It worked for you. Like I said, you probably shouldn't even have had to read. They could just look at your headshot and say, "There's our guy." And at the end, one of them did say that. If he can even speak, that's our guy. Dean, man, this is fun. Keep doing what you do. Social media is a dangerous, terrible place. You make it better. So keep fighting that way. Yes to Elon Musk as well. But hey, we really appreciate you coming on and devoting all of this time. We'll get you and Chris together too. Let's make that a priority. Okay.
Love it. I'd love to, Bob. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean Cain.
God bless.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Strictly Speaking. One of my favorite episodes so far. This guy is, clowny Superman thing. He is a super guy, a Superman, and he's doing great things as well. So let us know what you think about this episode of Strictly Speaking. Leave comments wherever it is that you're watching this video. Make sure you share it with others and tell us who you want to see next right here on Strictly Speaking on True Blue. We'll see you next time.